because I think there were some things that we plugged in prior or just after we've decided on the title. So we'll probably play with some extra things today. So Kimberly is going to be asking the questions this evening, and then we'll get to play. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first and foremost question that's on everybody's mind. Okay, someone has asked to if you could please address the coronavirus, which is becoming more intense or serious globally. Wondering how something like this could be possible with the inverted matrix gone and natural organic 3D in place. We know the virus is created to do harm, but how could such a thing be able to survive in organic 3D? It seems so completely wrong.
Okay. Well, you always start with the tough ones. Of course, we
course.
get to play because that one's the biggest one on people's minds right now. And, you know, like I was just saying in the beginning of this this transmission here, that, you know, things are changing around us and the, you know, movement and so forth. And there is movement, all right, for sure. In an essence, when we're talking about the coronavirus, okay, and I don't really like to make a big thing out of it because in essence, a lot of people are talking about it, but it felt very instrumental to discuss it from a larger viewpoint. So anything like the coronavirus at this point in time has presented itself to create a certain level of frequency to kind of put us in a position where we have an option to decide what we want to play with. Do we want to go into the fear component, or do we want to go through the viewpoint of seeing the perfection of it unfolding? Okay? And the perfection unfolding is destabilizing a lot of our preconceived ideas and systems and so forth, but it's also triggering out any programs of survival and fear and, you know, going into reaction mode of some sort. But we have to keep in mind that, you know, something like this came in, when we're talking about it being monitored, for example, a lot of our brother sister souls are working very closely with us, okay? And the one thing that kept coming up is the fact, okay, this is going to unfold. How is it going to play out? Now, is it here to wipe out people or anything of that nature? It's not. The intent may have started that way, but it's not the way it's presenting, or it's going to present, or it's going to play out. In fact, it's just another version of another virus, really, that, you know, we've had before, because we've had viruses all the time. However, it was important for the control structures to kind of put this elevated fear. Now, part of it say, well, it may have a negative component because now it's scaring people and it's affecting people's livelihoods and it's affecting people that are not well and that, you know, with the potential to check out or anything of that nature. But when we truly understand it, that any vehicle that comes along, okay, has two sides to it. One may be the intent of the initiators or where it was started and how it was started, but nothing plays out unless it's agreed not only from a collective perspective, but it's also for the highest good, matching the frequency and the staging that we are going through right now. So the play out of the virus itself coming into play is just playing out in a way where it allows us to go, like I was saying earlier, to be able to connect with yourself and choose. Do I go with the narrative of being afraid and cautious and I have to take safety precautions and so forth and eliminate travel, eliminate anything that I want to do? Or do I just say, okay, this is the backdrop, this is what's playing out. Whoever wants to jump in and play with it, they have the freedom to do so. However, I choose not to participate. That means I still will do whatever I need to do. And yes, maybe there might be some, what we can call inconveniences, but if we're actually light and playful, you won't even experience that part of it. So in essence, what's going on is really giving us the opportunity to move things forward. So from a higher perspective, it's saying, okay, great. Whoever needs this experience to elevate certain parts of their experience so that they would be able to trigger whatever program, story, belief systems, and so forth that are active within them, but at the same time also to show the infrastructure and how solid it is, which is really not, in a sense. So that, we have to be there as the grounding point, as that part of it. From a larger perspective, it's also looking at it and saying, okay, this is a vehicle like any other vehicle. There's a lot of ailments out there, a lot of viruses out there that are, playing a particular role on the planet right now, and they're just vehicles for activating higher consciousness, bringing up old programs, able to address certain things that we may still have super active within ourselves emotionally and other part, but it's also an opportunity for us to advance in a big way. So it's an opportunity to move forward. But then there are going to be some bodies and souls and whatever else that say, okay, this is a good vehicle to departure in, because as I departure, because I'm done, not because of the virus is just one of many I can choose, and I can choose the corona as a way out, because if I go out with that way, it will cause a certain specific ripple effect within my family dynamics, within my friendship, within my work environment, and so forth. So you're not going to check out unless, in one way or another, you've already decided to do so, and it does not matter if it's one thing or another. But the coronavirus is not, a very exclusive saying, oh, this is one vehicle that if you don't do something about it, you're going to go for the ride, and that's it. And that ride can be very devastating in one way or another, and used as a checkout point. But it's not. The key here is to understand that all of it is no different than the others. Okay, when you really look at it, people that actually have looked at it, besides the propaganda that was put into place to really promote this, and again, there's a perfection to all of that. They've said that this is no different than any other virus, and people die every year, people get sick every year with different viruses and so forth. This one here was one that's chosen to be targeted as a way to create a media frenzy and so forth. I'm not saying this so that you can feel comfortable. I'm saying this from a higher perspective. You connect to yourself, you say, do I give power to this or not? I'll give it power if it's going to help me in some way or another to kind of show up my fears and show my insecurities and show me my vulnerabilities and all of these other stories, programs, belief systems that I've taken on. Or I'm just going to say, doesn't matter what's playing out there. I am my own governor. I decide what I want to play with or not. And I want to hold a certain spectrum of frequency of light, playfulness, and so forth, no matter what's going on. Because then you become the example of change, the example of I'm not affected by my environment. I am the one that affects my environment. So in essence, if you're in a state of peace and love and playfulness and imagination, creativity, and so forth that you're emanating from you as sourceness, then you're basically going to change a lot of things around you. And then many of us doing that will shift all of that. But right now, the coronavirus has been designed and is allowed so that it destabilizes a few things, and it brings up things for a lot of people at this point. And again, the option is the option. Now, when the question comes back and say, okay, well, that was something that was created in the inverted matrix. And very much so. Okay. It was created in the inverted matrix under a 2D banner and an inverted 3D banner. Where are we now? Now, we are in organic. 3D and 5D. Well, how could we have this that was created here in organic 3D and organic 5D platforms? That's not possible, like you said. How could that be? How could that be? Well, we got to keep in mind, and I know I talked about it, but we got to keep in mind many of us are still very much working in the inverted matrix state of consciousness in our operating system, which reflects 2D and inverted 3D. Okay, and like I said, we have 3 years to purge this out of our system. And most of that system is memories in the subconscious mind, because that's how we've experienced ourselves in our subconscious mind as memories But we have to understand that the ego itself very much so operates within all of this. So we have to purge all of this stuff. We have to purge the ego. And when I say purge the ego, you're basically taking it out of the equation, which the ego itself wants to just keep going into the inverted inverted 3D and 2D and in the inverted matrix. I better write matrix here. So even though we're not transmitting the inverted matrix anymore, we're not getting the moon's transmission anymore, we are still operating within all of this that is still very much been program conditioned for an extended period of time under the inverted matrix, 2D and inverted 2D and inverted 3D. So look at it this way. Circumstances have changed since you were a child, for example. And as a child, you were afraid of certain things, or that you had certain experiences that at that time seemed to be very traumatic for you. Now, you're much forward from that period of time, in some cases, many, many years and decades later. And meanwhile, that's still in your operating system, so that you still have certain of those fears that were from childhood. And in childhood, you had a different state of consciousness, and you've adopted it as something good, bad, or whatever. So if that's a reflection that you're still holding on to your past, for example, then you could see that how this can still be playing out. Now, we have to understand that the scape of what we see under the banner of organic 3D and organic 5D, the participants involved are still very much working towards purging all of this stuff out. So their tendency is to recreate the same, but it's going to be less and less. Now, even though the coronavirus was made under this banner, you have to understand when it was put together, this banner was still active. Now it's being rolled out because everybody's on automatic default, and then we're responding on automatic default. So imagine everybody's turning around and saying, well, you know, we got this coronavirus, we got to be careful, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to, you know, close down countries and stop transportations and all of this stuff because we don't want it to spread or whatever it is because it's something nasty. If you're actually yourself operating in organic 3D and organic 5D without any of this residue in place, guess what? You're going to look at it and say, oh yeah, so what? Go out and play, do whatever you want. Whoever wants to go play. Doesn't bother, and you're not affected in any way because it's not something you choose to support. Because at that state, it doesn't even refer as an automatic default because at that state, it's like it doesn't exist in my reality. The reality all around us may still reflect it because everybody's playing with it, but not in your reality. What does that also mean? It means that you don't take on the operating system or the codes that represent the coronavirus that gives you a certain amount of symptoms. That's what it is, symptoms, okay? So those symptoms can be used one way or another. Now, again, we have to keep in mind also that we are in charge of what we participate in and what we don't. It's not a fact of saying, I have no control and something can happen to me and I'd have no say. That's not how it works. We are in charge. We choose. Now, a lot of times what happens is we are not aware of the choice because we have all these programs all over the place. And you say, okay, you know something? I got to scare myself a little bit by having this come into my, my environment and experience it a little bit so I can see what's there. The other thing is you can turn around and say, well, okay, you know, who decides? Well, is it my soul? Yes. Is it my human entity? Yes. Is it my body? Yes. And what else? Is it my ego? At times, yes. But the ego is really tricky because the ego says, I don't want it. And at the same time is, if I have it, I can really go back and reinforce this part. I can really play in the inverted 3D, 2D longer. So let's scare them. Let's go play that, right? However, this is not the governor. Really, it's your soul, your human entity, and body. And a lot of times the soul takes the bigger role of deciding if you're going to play there or not. Okay? But why would the soul do that? Why would it want to go play in an environment where you have a virus of some sort? Again, is it a tool for progress? Is it a tool that helps us shift? Is it a tool that's going to shake up all of the stuff that we've taken on that we carry from any of this older version of ourselves that we're carrying? And that's really what it's all about. So we can look at it a couple of ways right now. You could say, okay, the world is being shaken up by it because everybody's giving it a lot of power. Everybody's just propagating it, whatever it is, publicizing it and doing whatever. And even though the facts are skewed in one way or another, it's still perfect, saying, okay, well, we're only saying a few things, but, there's many more people that have it that recover with no problem whatsoever, and it's like any other. It comes and goes, right? Where the other side of it is saying, oh, let's focus on a few that, and then let's inflate that too if we want to. There's a lot of things, but, I'm not saying that, you have to go one way or another. What I'm saying is when you tune into yourself, when you're actually looking at it and say, okay, the game's the game. It's playing out right now, and I know that whatever's playing out, because if you asked yourself, whatever's playing out is for the highest good for everybody concerned, period. If it wasn't, it wouldn't happen. Now, what it looks like, how it plays out, it's staging and preparing us to go in a way that, will accelerate. I mean, we're talking about, I've had people say, okay, so all of these people that are playing in the 2D inverted 3D that have no intention of moving, they're going to check out, right? I tell you, are they going to check out soon? Meanwhile, now we're actually added another vehicle that have the possibility to utilize it. And now we go, oh my God, But that's not really the focus here because, like I said, there's lots of different entrance and exit points at this point of any departure movement forward. You're making me laugh. But, so the exit points are there, but it doesn't have to be this one. It could be anything. If it serves, it is. But right now, that's the flavor that's going on right now. And yes, look at it. It's affecting the markets. It's affecting oil prices. It's affecting travel. It's affecting businesses. And it really shakes things up. It makes us review things and look at it in a different way and then have a choice of where we want to give our power to. So the answer is, why is it in the organic 3D and the organic 5D platform? It's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool. It's beneficial for us to move through it so that we are able to really ground ourselves more and more, because just the fact that you're in one of those two right now does not mean that we're not still operating within that construct.